Welcome to a true spiritual adventure story like the world has never known, with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon. Good morning, good day. This is Dr. James Weldon. Continuing our discussions of living an enlightened life, stories from my book, Chapter 10. And in the last segment, I'm talking about that I spent a number of years at that time building and developing a series of health and wellness clinics. And they were successful. They ended up in Boulder, Colorado. We had medical doctors now working for me, massage therapists, different healers. I wasn't a very good practitioner. I just wanted to give everything, tell it all, lay it all out. Everything you needed to do, because I realized that I wasn't really in control of whether people were healthy. And physically, you can be absolutely healthy and living in turmoil and pain and suffering all the time. At this point in my life and in this part of my life, I'd had a very successful holistic healthcare wellness center. I dreamed of creating this, and it was all up and running, multiple clinics and everything. I'm beginning to feel that I may have reached the end of that whole healing process. And in my meditation this next week, I began to see images, flashes, gradually a little bit and then more, of myself as an elderly Chinese man, moving these energy fields. In that time, which obviously apparently is an earlier life, I'm working with clients without touching them in an Oriental healing center. And they would come into the space in the room, and we're feeling this bond of love. And my life becomes in this space, their life, and I'm feeling them as myself. And in their bodies, there are blocks to be released. I move through layers of the body like a detective looking for a villain. And I find the right place here, I push here, I pull here, always with love. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they laugh, moving and sitting as these changes are taking place. In a few minutes, it's over. We bow to each other in respect, and another person comes in the room and it starts over. My entire life in that time was spent reaching that plateau. But yet I'm feeling that even though I'd reached apparently this plateau, I'm unfulfilled. I am unfulfilled. There's something more that I need to be complete. And I open my eyes, at home in Colorado now, and tears are running down my face. And even with this insight, I'm realizing that my healing work like this is now over. And the reason is simple. I saw my life in this ancient life as a good healer, yet I was unfulfilled. Realized that I've been this way before. The karma of those life has ended, and I walked away from it. And all I know at that time, and I'm starting to seek again, search again. And I closed my office and I retired to a mountain home in Colorado. And here overlooking the Continental Divide and the snows. And my work at this point is apparently relearning the meaning of love. I need to find and live fully the essence of the healthcare that I want to practice. Until that happens, I have nothing more to give. 3 more years pass in my mountain retreat. In many hours, I'm having this silent communication with the divine God going on, both in terms of feeling and discussion. And I talk to myself, and I'm feeling this flame of love growing in my heart. And I look at my entire life and I realize it's a lesson of letting go. I realized that I could have everything in this world. But without living the divine constantly, I realize I really have nothing. It's like ashes. In spite of these many experiences that I'd passed through, I'm not ready to serve the world. And a battle is raging in the inner side of me. And hopefully many of you can appreciate some of this. It's a storm that no one can see. And like the story of our nomad in the desert, I go back to God and each time offering more. I'm negotiating with the divine. Okay, I'll do this. if you'll let this open up. What do you want from me, I ask. And at each step, I feel a little more truth. And the flickering life of the self becomes steadier. And intuitively, I get the sense that my time maybe will come soon. And like the nomad, I begin to pray to die, but die to these limitations. That I'm ready to become nothing so that I can become everything, is entitled Amazing Kundalini. There's a poem at the beginning. This is the poem. How can I thank you? How can I show you the greatness of love? For you have put that love in me and all around. I taste your sweetness in the nectar of my tongue. I see your glory in the rising of the sun. I feel your gratitude in the fullness of my head. Yet all these things are only a tiny fraction of your being. Like a giant wave, you sweep through my soul and carry me away to your home, to your home, actually. So after 3 years in the mountains, I have this feeling that something significant is about to happen. It's like the feeling that comes with the fall in the mountains. I'm living about 7,000 feet above sea level. And there's something in the air that says, you know, winter is coming. Even the way the birds fly seems different. And even though it may have been a month before the trees are changing, you know. So like that, I feel that there will be another major change coming into my life. One day in meditation, a sweet feeling arises in my heart that is so intense, I can't find a description for it. And then finally it comes, victory. An incredible sense of victory. An extraordinary achievement, something. This sense, this deep feeling of victory comes again and again to my mind. My life has become so simple. There's no struggle. Everything seems to be happening. Somehow money is coming in from nowhere. You know, to pass my time, I counsel people that are in financial distress from my home. Back in the past, when I was in Iowa, at the university there in Iowa, we lost a home there. We had some financial difficulties. And so I decided I'll try to help people get over this because I went through it myself. And I'm working for free, helping people out that are going through problems. This was also a time when there was a huge financial collapse that was going on. Yet opportunities somehow come to support myself, literally from nowhere. So in meditation, I go into a blissful state and I emerge completely from the world. And my mind becomes silent, thinking ceases, my breath is so shallow, hardly moving at all. And there's a palpable silence, even in activity all the time. One morning, I awake and it happens. And literally, an energy takes over the body, and I watch in awe. You know, my life has brought me to the realization that the supreme intelligence in life is always with us. I see that we actually don't control our body and mind at all. You think you do, but you really don't. We mistakenly believe that we're the source of our actions, and this mistaken identity is the cause of so much suffering. And the effect of this ignorance, we are totally lost in our action, and we forget our natural blissful state. And recapturing that, a simple, totally effortless, childlike awareness is one of the goals of life. Like a baby, tabula rasa, nothing, no control. And once that is established, life is lived in the eternal present. And that blissful present is real freedom, true freedom. I experienced this state in degrees since I was a child, yet I never realized what it was. And over the years, I taught about the self, but I really never knew what it was. And I was like a blind man who was touching an elephant that couldn't see its full form. I was touching this piece, but I never really saw, in truth, never saw it clearly. This morning, I awake to something absolutely wonderful. And I remember this feeling many years earlier. I'd received a spiritual gift, something called Rittambara Pragya, knowledge, truth, much more to that, from a very mysterious being in 1976. Now it's 1993. 17 years of my life had passed in a flash. The difference is this morning, I'm in my body with that same feeling. And there's no feeling of movement at all, but my body is moving. And the eye, the inner eye is completely still. It's like moving through traffic in a royal limousine. I look out the windows of perception, but I'm untouched by anything passing by. And that experience is so natural, so light, and so unlimited. There's no sense of being in the body at all. Rather, my body and my whole world rests in that awareness. So like a drunkard, I lurch out of bed, I stagger across the room. My room is completely black and dark, but I can see somehow. The senses, even with my eyes closed, I can see. The eyes, I'm not even sure they're open. I stumble about because I'm so absorbed within, like a man kind of peeking out from on the covers, only to see the world, a little bit of world, and then diving back into sleep. And I look out from that awareness, and I dive back into the inner being. And my body still continues to move on its own, without any intention or thought. And I'm so amazed. And before I realize what's happening, I find myself on the floor, moving through a series of yogic asanas, postures. In the next, my breath is moving in ways I never knew before. And I said, this is strange, because I never do yogic postures. Even though my name is Yogadhi, being in possession of that, I was really, in a certain sense, a very lazy yogi. I never did that. And I think probably part of that comes from my tradition with being with Maharishi. We did a few simple things. You know, almost 15 years ago, I actually gave up doing stretching exercises, asanas at all. And occasionally I'd stretch, but I would rather lose myself in the inner experience of meditation. Yet this morning, I'm spontaneously experiencing what's called kriyas of yoga. This is common in many different cultures, and it's actually, children do this as well. They're born in mudras, and you watch young children, they'll do a lot of this spontaneously. So the definition of a kriya is a purifying action. So meditation is a kriya. Deep breathing is a kriya. Even taking a bath, if done with full awareness, actually is a kriya, if it's done with the right awareness. But on a deeper level, kriyas are spontaneous action performed by the inner self, the big self, that lead to higher states of awareness. And within our body, there are very, very powerful energies. One name for these is Kundalini or Shakti. So these are subtle energies that control and operate the body. And their goal is to purify the body through movement. In the past, often my hands might, curl into different postures, into movements, different types of movements. And the most classic is the chin mudra, where the thumb and the index finger touch lightly. And what these do is they help circulate the energy in specific ways. This one allows energy to move into the head area, but there are many of them. But ultimately, all of these things, even the whole field of yoga, is not something that somebody sat down and went, okay, I'm going to touch my feet, and now I'm going to touch my head, and now I'm going to twist this way. ultimately the sources, they happen spontaneously, and then other people imitate those. And that's actually how a lot of the knowledge emerged. So in the past, my body might twist in various ways as the energy moves up the spine. And over the years, I experienced some pretty strong kriyas. And then sometimes in these early days, sometimes my body actually would jump off the ground as the energy rushes up the spine. And sometimes I'd felt like when that happened, by the way, way back, I was actually, as far as I know, the first person to do that in that organization. First being taught, I was in the first class there. And at that time, my body roared like a lion. Every cell in my body was lit up like the sun. Sometimes my eyes rolled back in my head. Sometimes I breathed rapidly and deeply in a unique way. Sometimes I would laugh, cry suddenly. And over the years, I experienced many thousands of these, but they come and go. And so what? And I understood that these were only indications of some of the stress being released. Because of this, I ignored them when they came. This morning was very different. This unique morning was very different. In some of the scriptures of India, the teacher that I knew was the Maharishi. He said the knowledge of the path of unity of God, the yoga of the Supreme Self, was not invented by man, wasn't invented by man. The seers or the sagers declared that this wisdom is not created by any human mind. And the deep wisdom at the core of all of our traditions is not created by any human mind. Rather, it's seen, and they use the word cognized directly, by seers, while they're in the higher states of very high ecstatic consciousness, far beyond normal awareness. And somehow they gain the capacity to merge with this huge divine consciousness, and their minds are somehow filled with wisdom and knowing. So as I moved through the spontaneous yoga in the early morning, I wondered, was it possible that the inner divine force the Shakti was now teaching me this hidden science of yoga? I was told that this could only happen if the awareness is in the being, in the self, free and uninvolved as a spectator, as a witness. And I remember a book about the tradition of teachers called the Holy Tradition of Teachers. There's a whole lineage that I was given when I became a teacher. This is a picture of me becoming a teacher long ago, and I guess it was in 1973. And I also told the story of when I went home to talk in my hometown, and we had this huge effect on the community there. This is actually from the article. See how young and skinny I am. And I did a mustache because I look so young. He said that the real key practices are unattainable. They're not from books, they're not from treatises. They're only taught from perfect spiritual masters, enlightened beings who silently pass these top secret practices from heart to heart. And something unknown and perhaps unknowable is now moving within this body. And I watch as these movements continue to move into, for me, impossible postures with ease. And the next morning at 4:30 a.m., it happens again. First day it went on for a couple of hours. The next day it happens again. And then again. And during these days that follow, I feel closer to realizing the enlightened mind that I ever imagined possible. Each day early in the morning, the same thing happens. You know, I'm not an early riser. By the way, I've never been an early riser. So all of you who, you know, you want to get up really early at Navaswam and do everything and go out and spend your time in it, feel patient. You know, that sometimes if you miss that, but even lazy yogis, I was a lazy yogi for really a long time. The same thing happens. So long before dawn, this awareness, I take my shower and then I shave and I come back in my room, and this great force, this what I call the Kundalini Shakti. It's a word. It's a word. Don't get stuck on the words. Then my mind retreats into this very, very silent witnessing state as that power moves me through some of these hidden secret practice. And one morning before dawn, during the time when these energies are the strongest, Maharishi comes. I'm sorry, guys. This happens. And in the dream, there's a transcendental state between waking, dreaming, and sleeping. And it is possible to communicate with those living or unliving. He's still living at this time. And I'm standing in a room with cream-colored walls, and the whole place is glowing with wonderful light. And I look down to see Maharishi coming towards me. Movement that I know so well. You know, I knew it from being there in Switzerland, but you know, I have observed this unmoved and completely unimpressed by the events. And he walks straight up to me, and he looks me in the face and he says, Ringa Garina. My Sanskrit's not very good. He says this Sanskrit phrase to me. And then I awake. And it's 4 o'clock in the morning now. And I scramble in the dark looking for a pen to write down this, you know, and I write down his words, knowing that there's something going on. He's given me something. And all I know is that the words are something in Sanskrit, in ancient language from India. And I'm afraid that I'll get the pronunciation incorrect because obviously I have no training in Sanskrit. And as the sun rises, finish my meditation. I've gone through this period of very, very strong movements. And I wonder about a translation. You know, how will I discover the meaning of the words? So I think, okay, the library. And I wonder, the public library, maybe they'll have a dictionary. Hours later, I arrive at the University of Colorado and trying to find a translation for this. And the more that I try to do a translation, the mystery becomes deeper, because I find it's confusing. I find that these words contain tiers of significance. Maybe I'll keep you hanging. Sanskrit is very different from English. There are layers of knowledge contained in each word. And I'm bewildered by this because I'm no expert in language. I've never had any training in Sanskrit, but fortunately I only received a couple of words. And the dictionary says that this word Garina can mean honor and gain the favor of Mother Divine. Gari, ringa means to make favorable or to propitiate or to gain or obtain. And Gari is one of the many names of the Shakti energy of Mother Divine. In India, there are many names that have come of gods and goddesses. It's not that this divinity is not one, but they have many aspects. And this is like flowers, different flowers of one reality. And the divine force of Mother Divine is the power or one aspect of God that created the universe. In the past, these great wise seers embodied that so people could understand that. But the reality behind that is not in any form. And she's maybe depicted as a mother giving birth. And then her child is the universe and the fruit of self-realization. And Gauri is also the inner Shakti or Kundalini. It also means yellow or brilliant. And analogized as the wife of Shiva, or the Shiva is the self, the inner self of all. Altogether, this message says to me, and again, I'm admitting to limited knowledge of Sanskrit, give thanks for the power that has created this universe, for it has given us life. That is your teacher now. Honor that power and win its favor. And as I look at these words, I see that I have no idea how to accomplish this. What am I going to do? Who am I? What do I know? And I'm being told to proceed on a path, on the path to oneness to God by winning the blessings of Gaudi, Mother Divine. And I realized that Maharishi is apparently releasing me to go someplace elsewhere. And I wonder, is there a higher way for me somewhere? You know, I walked away from my healthcare profession. And it's now time, apparently, to move to something new or different, a new spiritual path. And over the years, I gradually separated myself from that organization, even though I loved those guys and all those people that were involved with that, the TM organization, its activities. And for me, the process was painful in the same way that it was physically painful to leave being with the Maharishi 17 years ago. You know, I really haven't been involved with him for a while. It's still painful for me. And I'm not actually the only one. There are thousands of people who had over time going through the same thing. Over the years, I saw that the organization had gradually coalesced and shrunk. For years, I tried to struggle why this had happened to many people. And I actually began to see a deeper reason. I asked Maharishi how he gained enlightenment. In one of our meetings, I said, how did you gain this? He said simply that it was given by his spiritual teacher. His name was Guru Dev. Enlightenment for him was actually a gift of love. And this is certainly my experience, that when I received this incredible boon or gift of what's called Rittambara Pragya. And what had happened to me wasn't through meditation, or wasn't through any technique. Those things were just tools, I think, to help clear the way. And somehow grace had flown into my life through love and devotion to what I call God or the unknowable. That was the real cause of my growth. However, 20 years ago, very, very few of us were ready for this level of teaching. And when this really great teacher, now obviously was passed by now, first came to the United States, he says he faced a choice. I could either take a few people to the highest state, or I could bring this teaching of meditation to the world. And he was given an instruction in a mysterious meeting with his teacher when he traveled around India down to the south of India. And he was told to bring meditation to the world. And that's exactly what he did. And I wondered over the years, did that change remove an essential key to spiritual evolution? No, it was just that in our case, at that time, I think very few people were ready for this level of knowledge. Remember that in the 1960s and 70s, we had rebelled against every type of authority. I hated our government, our church, our teachers, our entire society. I mean, we were a whole group of people that hated everything. Even though we were supposedly a love generation, we were against a lot. And that was not an attitude of love and surrender. The last thing I was willing to accept is, at that time, would be another leader directing my life. At that time, this is when the Maharishi came. In the sharing of the benefits of meditation for the first time, Maharishi discovered that all the reporters who wanted to know about meditation were only curious if it could help them sleep better. This was an article that came out. They couldn't even conceive of the possibility of divine love and all of that. And at that time, the organization was called the Spiritual Regeneration Movement. That originally became the International Meditation Society. And when that happened, really all mention of God, religion, really gurus, divine love, prayer, devotion, it actually disappeared. The science of creative intelligence emerged. He even wrote a book called The Science of Being and the Art of Living. But it looks as though he taught really the science of being. And the other half, the art of living, I believe was deferred because it had to be. And he was absolutely right. In that scientific form, millions of people took to this meditation, transcendental meditation. And when asked by a reporter if all of these people were devotees of him, They're following their own experience. It was exactly what the world needed at that time. And the world of meditation, the door of meditation opened, and a whole society of hard-headed skeptics, also including me, accepted that knowledge. And for the first time, a large-scale research study at major universities began to verify that. And that over the years, I met many, many advanced seekers and dozens of spiritual paths. So I've traveled to many different centers in the United States and around the world, but particularly in the United States, I discovered amazing things. Many, if not most of them, started their journey with Maharishi's TM technique. And even in 1976, I intuitively knew about devotion. And that devotion drew grace into me, resulting in rapid spiritual progress. And for 18 years after that time, the fruit waited to become ripe. And now, Maharishi tells me, in this mysterious experience, it's time to move on. And that I'm released to be on my way. And so sitting in the library at the University of Colorado in Boulder, after translating these words, I bow in my mind to that being, just as I'd done so many years ago. Yet I did not understand, even beginning to understand, the gift, what had happened in Switzerland so many years ago. So let's end the broadcast today, because there's another message that shows up here in a few more days. We'll talk about that. All of this stuff needs to be validated. I was trying to be really cautious about all of this to verify what was true and not true, because I really wanted for my life to be really practical, down to earth. But of course, I was having some things which are difficult to understand. We're building upon a series of experiences and understandings that happened to me from my childhood, because we're moving into realms of potentiality which are obviously not common. So join me again. The great force of divine blessing, may it awaken in you. Thanks for joining us in our YouTube channel, books, podcast episodes on living the enlightened life, and autobiography with your host, Dr. James Yogadhi Weldon.